I did notice in this latest episode, and by the way, if you are listening to this, we don't. This whole thing is a spoiler. So
yeah. Oh, sorry, disclaimer alert.
Like even coming on to our conversation here, this podcast conversation, just standing disclaimer, spoilers throughout, because we don't warn.
No. Yeah. If anything, like if you see two guys that look like us, guess what? Spoiler alert. Okay.
Your shirt is so cool, dude.
So I figured I had to pull it out. It was the week of all weeks that you had to pull that out. I mean, I think it's just classic that Jon Favreau, like he takes. I'm gonna direct the first episode, and he set the bar pretty high. I think going into the second season here, man.
Dude, your armor even looks like it's more than pockmarked. It maybe even has some of the Sarlacc acidic decay that Boba Fett had to endure.
And it's it sounds like crate dragons also. They've got some pH balance. They need some Tums on that planet.
Oh, one way or another. We need a buffer. We need a buffer in here, folks, because there's some acid coming our way.
Yeah.
Well, that's at the end of the episode. Are we going to jump there already?
No, we don't. Yeah, well, there's a spoiler alert for the end of the episode, but the reality is I guess we're into it. This is fantastic. Season 2's here, and we got some new stuff to talk about. So, where do you want to go? What do you want to talk about? Any? Before you sat down, did you have any predictions for the direction of where the season was going to go?
I had none.
Hopes?
I came in with no expectations other than that. I can't wait for it to start. It's awesome. I don't care what kind of awesome. I feel like with the first season, they set the expectations really high with that first episode. It had that real Old West vibe, which this one did not disappoint. Yeah. And so I had this, I really came in like open expectation, but that it was going to be pretty epic. And I felt like the first episode delivered that, as well as the Baby Yoda, like cuteness factor that I wish I didn't like so much. Like I loathe myself a little bit for liking it so much because I'm such a critic of the Ewoks and Jar Jar Binks as far as gimmicky, like kitschy type marketing schemes go. And I feel like Baby Yoda is huge on the marketing scheme type thing, but the dude doesn't even speak, he just coos and moves his ears a little bit.
If anything, I was actually thinking that, if there is some follower that wants to give us like feedback in the below here, we may need to start tracking the number of coos per episode. I actually turned on the subtitles so that I can't keep up with that. We need a coo tracker because I mean, every time I'm like, oh, you sucked me right back in. You sucked me right back. And speaking of the child or Baby Yoda, I was, after watching the first season, I tried to convince my kids, like, he's floating around in this little pod. Why did it not end up being called Pod Yoda? I mean, because half the time that he's traveling around, he's in the pod, and it makes it like just absolutely clear he needs to stick to the pod right now. Small legs, okay? We've only got like so much time in this episode.
Very far. Yeah,
we got you. You got small legs. Okay, just hop on that thing that floats everywhere and is almost virtually indestructible, so we can move along with the story here. So I jumped Yoda.
I jumped onto a Easter egg website from the very first episode of season 1 of Mandalorian, like how many different callbacks to the old school Star Wars were in there, droids and armor and characters and all this stuff. And I saw this reference in there because, it's like, oh, is this Yoda? Who is this? And there was this reference in there, and it didn't give much of an explanation, but they're like, if you've read into our prequels to the season, then we refer to this creature as Yaddle. And I was like, is that like he's in a cradle and his name is Yoda? And so it's
Which would
Yaddle?
make sense because because the other known species of this, like we know of Yoda, and we know in episode 1 and I think part of episode 2, Yaddle sat on the council and those are the only two of the species that we know about.
Oh, whoa, wait a minute. Okay, you're talking about the movies now. So his name was Yaddle?
There was a gal named Yaddle that sat on the council that was different than Yoda, a female.
Okay, I'm remembering that now, but that's
species.
just a real quick scene from a movie, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It's really brief. No
Yeah,
character development whatsoever.
I went down like one of those holes you were talking about that, like, okay, this is the
An Easter
only
egg hole.
third one of those things where once you're there, folks, just stay on the content. You got to go over those ads. Don't be.
The Easter egg can turn into a deviled egg really quick.
Right. Like you'll be watching a YouTube video on bowel cleansing before you know it.
You'll have taken 3 surveys and had your card out. Yeah. Don't do it. Okay, so that helps me, because as much as I think of myself as a fan, there's so much that I don't know. It's definitely not exhaustive. And man, you're showing your Star Wars prowess right now with saying that that's actually the name of a female character of a species. So then we only know of 3 different individuals from their species. And from what I can tell, the species is unnamed in the Star Wars universe.
Correct. Yes, that's what I've also seen. Yeah.
Okay.
So Yoda, Yaddle, and Pod Yoda. Because maybe we can make Pod Yoda happen. But
Baby Yoda's not going away. It's just not going away.
No.
50-year-old Baby Yoda. The coos.
Right, the coo.
Okay, so can I just say, though, for this episode, Baby Yoda coos. The one cool moment of action is in the opening scene after you get through the recap, when he closes his little pod door because the whistling birds are activated,
right,
on the Mando armor, right? And so that's the one thing. Well, there's another scene later on where he's interacting with a little creature and he's kind of moving around a little bit, and then he's playing peekaboo with the spittoon in the saloon and the cantina. But other than that, he doesn't really do anything. I don't think he used the Force. I don't think that there was any Force usage or any type of Jedi action whatsoever in this episode.
No, I think it's very interesting that, like, you look at the child and he's got big eyes. He's doing a lot of watching,
Yep. Taking it in,
taking things in, and he also he's starting to have a kinship with the Mandalorian and knows when it's time to hop back in his pod or hop into a spitoon.
Like these things keep happening. He's noticing a pattern.
Yeah, I don't know if they like pheromones or like just sensing, what's going on, but when
the whistling birds light up, it's pretty obvious what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
The bodies are going to hit the floor. Okay.
Right.
So I couldn't help but note that the chapter 9 is the first episode of season 2, and it doesn't have a title to it from what I can see.
They specifically withheld the chapter until you get to the credit scenes, and I believe that they put it The Marshal.
Oh, that would make sense. Did you see it in the credit scenes?
I did. Well, I looked it up on IMDb and I couldn't find it anywhere. And but then initially, the first time I watched it, it did not have a title. But then as I was watching it with my daughter, she pointed out, "Oh, The Marshal," which I thought was humorous because the actor that they have play it, I don't, like, a lot of people may have seen him do some other stuff, and he plays from a show called Justify, where he was actually a U.S. Marshal.
For
years, which I thought was John Favreau. It's humorous how some of those things come together. Right. So I wanted to touch on, before we even got to like the first scene, their walk in during the very first part as they're heading to the fight scene. I thought it was interesting that they're showing us the timeline. So we believe it's about 5 years after what's revealed is we're currently 5 to 9 years.
It's like 5 years after
right?
the second Death Star.
Okay. And people in the comments below can like give us the how many years after Yavin or whatever.
We welcome it.
But it's clear that they're, like, based on the graffiti, there's discourse and frustration with the Empire. I don't know if you picked up on that, on the graffiti that I was seeing.
Yeah, I saw it.
On the walk-in, and they also definitely set up that very much the same way they set it up in the first season, that Mando and the child are side by side, and then he speaks to that later, that he's not doing any of this, I'm leaving the child in someone else's care. Everywhere I go, he goes. And they also clearly set up with whatever creatures are in the dark, that there's eyes are always watching, which I think is very interesting. That in that town, wherever they're going there's so many more eyes that know exactly, oh, that's a Mandalorian, and there's someone in a pod floating with him. They know who he is. And
yeah,
just
they know this profile. They're
way,
profiling it because they've heard the stories coming in.
Right. And what we don't realize is that, yeah, they all know what's going on. They know that he's on his way there. Right. There's no one. Yeah. So I just think it's interesting that we as Christians, people are constantly watching, and there's a lot of eyes on you. And I just thought the symbolism was clear, even though they're getting some feedback of how, be it through the graffiti or in the same way you get feedback in your daily life of where people stand on different things.
That's good.
Hey, we're celebrating this type of diversity, or we're standing for this, or I drive by an abortion clinic on my way to work, and there's people, praying outside there. You in your daily life see very similar feedback, or you see different advertisements out there that let people stand. People are out there, like, society is letting you know where they stand on certain things.
Steve, you're always spiritualizing stuff. Thank you for taking us there. I like the eyes watching thing that you called out. I thought they were Jawas at first, and then there was the growling sounds, and then the end of that whole first scene, second scene, wherever you want to place it. They're obviously not Jawas. I don't know what they are, but they're not Jawas.
Yeah, and I'm kind of, disappointed, but I'm also not surprised. He didn't mince his words. He chose his words wisely, and it almost, it's in a very, like, I don't know. Was there any character come to mind that chose his words wisely when he had interactions with those in power at the time? I don't know.
Right. You could take the words and interpret them a lot of different ways, but he had the meaning that he wanted, that they were going to mean, and he was going to act on. So I don't know. The whistling birds and Jesus, I don't know if we could put them together.
Well, I guess the one thing I took away from the whistling birds is that I put in my notes there that, quite frankly, others can't comprehend. He's in this situation where everyone else in that room, they think they have the drop on him, and they think, like, this is craziness for you to think that you've got a way out, and in his mind, he's like, it's craziness for me to think I'm in any danger at all.
Yeah, he's not worried about it.
Yeah,
he's not worried about it. He has the sense of, like, maybe he knows he's on his own, but it's like when he shows up, he's a one-man army. And this was the first time when it almost feels like, to me, the Beskar, like his armor, fights the battle for him. And so I started getting this, like, Ephesians 6 type of vibe out of that. But as I watched that fight a few times, how many times have you watched the episode so far?
I've just watched it 2 times now.
Okay. I've been through it. I've been through it 3 times. And the second and third time, I didn't, like, sit down and, like, that was the only thing that I was doing. But while I was doing other stuff, I was kind of taking it in, and then I'd be like, well, what did he say? And I have to go back. And then I got kind of stuck again and going anyway. But I noticed in that fight scene there by the ring, it's like the armor is his partner in the fight, and these guys go to punch him, and the armor, it's just like, dude, I'm wearing Beskar armor. You can punch me. Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. I'll just stand here, do your worst, But the armor is actually almost like a character.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, That's all I got. But I did. I mean, the depth of my spiritual kind of drilling there was just thinking about the armor of God, and when we clothe ourselves in the armor of God, then the battle is not ours to fight. It's something that we're trusting God to do, which is very different than the Mandalorian, who's like a one-man army, and you can come against him if you want to, but you're probably going to lose depending upon the circumstances. But his armor fights for him.
Right. I don't think he would have continued. He would have fought a different battle if he didn't go in there prepared. Very similar to if you have the, if you are correctly armored, you approach situations differently.
Sword of the Spirit, shield of faith, belt of truth, helmet of salvation, the breastplate of righteousness. I mean, come on, with the Beskar,
I don't know that there's anything biblical about, like, well, he does stab some people and then throws knives.
So I'm twisting these things to scripture, not scripture to these things, just to be reminded.
Okay.
Just to be reminded here.
Okay.
Yeah. No, that opening scene, it's interesting. Didn't disappoint.
Yeah, the dialogue, although and a lot of the scenes, it's been kind of a classic staple to tell the story without saying words. So when there is finally some dialogue, it's interesting how there's a lot going on in those exchanges, and I think you probably had some takeaways from what he said.
You mean there at the side of the ring there?
Yeah.
Like what are you thinking of? What are you thinking that I was thinking of?
That he's not one to gamble. He minimizes unknowns.
Right. He doesn't gamble. He says, "Do you like to gamble?" Not if I don't have to. I really like that. Like, why would you gamble things if you don't have to? And so he was in this situation that looked like a complete gamble to them, like you were talking about before. But he didn't feel like he was gambling. He was in control going into into this, like, this criminal syndicate haven.
Right, because for him, what we revealed during that time of that conversation, we found out that potentially what might be the arc for this season is that Mando's current quest is to return the child to his own kind. Okay. And that's, I want to dig in there when you're done with this thought. That's why he's willing to go into the den, because that's the one lead that he has on where people of his kind are from.
So, okay, there's a couple things here. One is that opening scene you talked about before, where all eyes are on, and they know there's this reputation coming in, and the crime lord there, what's his name, Gor Korgash. He says, we've just heard that this child's with you all the time. He's like, this is no place for a child. Well, the child stays with me. Well, that's what I've heard. He goes wherever I go. I messed that up. I'm not great with remembering things word for word, Steve. I need a lot of help with that. But his reputation precedes him. How interesting this is, that you got this like hardcore battle, ready bounty hunter that's a mercenary for hire, and he's coupled with this child, and people now know that they go together, that they're inseparable. Wherever the child goes, Mando goes. Where the Mando goes, the child goes. And that has become the reputation for him and for both of them.
His identity.
His identity is completely being reshaped. Now, that quest, I've been quested with. I love the way that he said that. I don't think we hear, maybe not outside of a certain type of fantasy books or gaming platforms and storylines. You might hear about a quest, but I've been quested with. Like, what have I been quested with? It got me thinking, like, what am I questing for? In life. But the quest ties directly into his identity within the creed of being Mandalorian. And it supersedes his identity as a bounty hunter.
Right.
And no one can understand that. They don't understand this value system that he has that tethers in and ties down his identity and he can interact with other codes and creeds, but those aren't going to change what he believes to be the way
Right.
that is now propelling him on his quest. His quest is to reunite the child with his people. Here's what's interesting to me. We don't know like the species of what Baby Yoda's people are, or Pod Yoda, if you prefer, Steve.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for being an early adopter.
Well, I'm just trying to support you. I'm not all in yet, but we got to start somewhere with the kickstart. The Mandalorian, what do you call people that work with metal?
Oh yeah, like
metalsmith.
Yeah.
All I can think of was like locksmith. What am I trying to? Blacksmith.
Yes.
The Beskar Smith. She has said you need to reunite him with her people. Where did she get that idea? Like, who's telling her that? Why is she the one that he's listening to, and why is she this voice of reason in his life? Why? And isn't it interesting that it's a female? It's this female voice that's speaking into him as this female warrior speaking into him, that's informing what his purpose is and what his quest is. I think there's some interesting things there. But my point that I'm rabbit trailing from 3 or 4 times now is reuniting Baby Yoda with his people is the Jedi, who are not a specific type of ethnicity or nationality or species. They are united in their common faith and belief and way through the Force. And so he's not looking for a species, from what I can tell. He's looking for this group of sorcerers. Mm-hmm. I found that really intriguing, that the identity then is not, it's found in a type of creed that another group of people have agreed to that's different than the Mandalorian one. But his Mandalorian creed is compelling him to have the child reunited with what are ancestral enemies to the Mandalore.
Now, also, isn't he also trying to find other Mandalorians? Because since we last saw him, like, he was rescued during like the Sin, I think, episode 3 of the previous season, and then he's been separated. And one of the last scenes he saw in one of the last episodes was a bunch of Mandalorian helmets. So I think he knows that he needs to find other Mandalorians so he can get Pod Yoda back to his people, whatever that may be. And I do think it's not lost on me that they both are groups that have been marginalized, and have been discriminated or misunderstood.
The groups being marginalized are the
Mandalorians, that their strength used to be in numbers, as they say in season 1, but now it's in their being very covert, never being in one place.
They're not a coven like a witch's coven. They're a covert. Yeah. They're a hive.
Yeah,
they're like a cell.
Yeah.
So, I'm not getting the idea that he's looking for the other Mandalorians for the sake of looking for other Mandalorians. He's looking for them as a part of his quest, because in finding them, they'll be able to help inform how to connect baby /Pod Yoda to baby hyphenated Pod Yoda to the Jedi sorcerers.
Which in reality, that's interesting that he's quested to do that, because it happens to be that at least whose armor he runs across, the previous owner of that, does know a little something about like Force users.
Okay, we probably need to go there. All right,
okay,
because we've been hanging
along.
out a lot of time in the fight scene with Koresh, Koresh, and he returns to Mos Eisley Dock, where's that funny lady? I could never catch her name, but she's kind of hilarious with her robot.
She is.
Droids that are fixing up the ships.
I thought there was some growth in Mando. He's opening to starting to trust the droids on a little bit of stuff,
Yeah, and she's kind of surprised.
Oh, caught off guard completely. Like,
yeah, where did that change? Oh, it's because of IG, is it IG-88 or IG-8? What's the designation there?
I think that name, I'm probably going to butcher his name, but is it Gwill? The guy from the I Have Spoken guy.
Right, but he
Like,
reprograms him to be a nurse
Mhm.
droid.
Right, right.
That's
I mean, we
funny.
can't underestimate those that we interact with, that they're going to influence us. So we kind of have to, guard ourselves of those that we run with.
I think it also helps me just kind of redeem Nick Nolte's whole thing too. Like, there is good in this man. There's redeemable qualities.
That's right.
You know,
That's
he was willing to go to the sand floor. Like, he laid down his life to get that child back.
Yep.
Okay. All right, Pete.
Right, so what I think is fantastic is they set the scene. They take us back to Tatooine, and what I think is beautiful
I
about
feel at
that
home in
is
Tatooine.
it's something familiar, but it's something new, because
Yeah.
this is a location that not only have we most likely, unless you've read Aftermath, not heard of this village before, or and
Have you read
even
Aftermath?
those that lived there actually are like, oh, I haven't heard that called that name since blankety blank. It's kind of
Steve,
blown away.
I understand you're trying to stay on track. Okay, I have the notes too. Have you read Aftermath?
I believe a couple years ago I listened to Aftermath. I missed the portion that talked about our buddy Cobb. So
I didn't know about these until I started nerding out on it after this episode, looking up stuff. And there's like a trilogy, right?
Yes.
Okay. And this brought up a whole bit. People can look into it themselves. We won't go there. So keep working down the outline here, Steve. I appreciate what you're doing.
Yeah. So so there's something new but different. But we're also kind of know what to expect. Okay. Either apparently on this world, where you either moisture farm or you are part of a mining guild. It seems like that's
or you're a Jawa or a Tusken Raider or a Sarlacc or a Hutt but if you're from off world and you're not indigenous to this planet, these are your livelihood routes.
I thought it was just a bunch of moisture farmers, but now